The sky has been dark for 3 years. The sun was swallowed by a wolf. The dead are sailing back. On a ship made from the fingernails of corpses, and on a frozen plain that stretches 100 leagues in every direction, an old god with one eye stands facing a wolf the size of a mountain. A wolf whose open jaws stretch from the earth to the sky. The god's name is Odin. The wolf's name is Fenrir. And in a few moments, the wolf is going to swallow him whole. But here is the part that makes this unlike any other mythology on Earth. Odin has known about this exact moment for 1,000 years. He knew the day, he knew the wolf, he knew he would lose. Every god on this battlefield has already heard the prophecy of their own death in detail from a seeress who was never wrong. And every single one of them came anyway. To understand why the wisest being in the universe would walk open-eyed into his own grave, we have to go back. Before the gods, before the worlds, back to a time when there was nothing at all, except the ice and the fire. In the beginning, there was no earth, no sky, no sea, no grass, no sound. There was only a gap, a yawning emptiness so vast that light had never crossed it. The Norse called it Ginnungagap, the gaping void, but the void was not alone. To the north of it lay a realm of ice called Niflheim, a place of frozen rivers, black mist and cold so absolute that it had never once been broken. And to the south lay Muspelheim, a realm of fire where the air itself burned, where rivers of flame carved through continents of ember, guarded by a fire giant named Surtur, who stood at its border with a sword brighter than the sun that did not yet exist. Remember Surtur. He is there at the beginning of this story. He will be there at the end of it. For ages beyond counting, the ice pushed slowly south and the fire breathed slowly north, and in the heart of the void, they met. Frost touched flame, and the ice began to melt. Drop by drop, the meltwater gathered in the emptiness, and the drops did something that water had never done before. They came alive. Out of the thaw rose a giant, the first living thing in all of existence. His name was Ymir. He was vast beyond imagining, and he was not good, and he was not evil, because good and evil had not been invented yet. He simply was. Enormous, hungry, and alone in the dark. But Ymir was not alone for long, because the melting ice would give up one more creature, a great cow, Audumla, whose udders ran with 4 rivers of milk. Ymir would drink from those rivers and grow strong. And as he slept, warmth would pool under his arms, and from the sweat of his left armpit, 2 more giants would emerge. A third would grow from his legs. While he slept, Ymir was becoming a family. The race of frost giants was born, not created with intention, not shaped with love, sweated out. From the very first generation, the giants were something that simply happened to the world, like weather and the cow. The cow needed to eat too. There was no grass, so Audumla licked the salty ice itself. And here the story does something quietly astonishing. As she licked, the ice began to take shape under her tongue. On the first day, hair emerged from the ice. On the second day, a head. On the third day, an entire being stepped free of the frost. Tall, beautiful, and strong, his name was Buri, and he was the first of the gods. Think about that image for a moment. The first god in Norse mythology was not spoken into existence. He was not dreamed, not sung, not commanded into being. He was licked out of the ice by a cow, one patient day at a time. This is a mythology with no interest in making its gods look dignified. It has other plans for them. Buri would have a son named Bor. And Bor would do something that would echo through every chapter of this story. He married a giant. Her name was Bestla, daughter of the frost giants, and she would bear him 3 sons. The first was called Vili, the second Ve, and the third was called Odin. So understand what that means. Odin, the highest of the gods, the All-Father, the one-eyed king of the heavens, was half giant by blood. The gods and the giants of this story are not 2 different species. They are one family, split down the middle. Every war that follows is a family feud. But the 3 brothers looked at the world they had been born into, and they saw a problem. There was no world. There was only the void, the mist, and Ymir, sprawling, growling, endlessly breeding, filling the emptiness with more and more giants. Nothing could be built while he lived. Nothing could grow. So the sons of Bor made a decision. The first true decision in the history of the universe. They would kill him. There was no battle song for this, no duel, no challenge, no honor. 3 young gods fell upon the sleeping ancestor of everything, their own great-grandfather, by blood. And they cut him down. The first death in the history of existence was not a sacrifice, it was not fate, it was a murder, and it was planned. The blood of Ymir burst from him in a flood so vast it drowned nearly every giant alive. An entire race almost erased in a single morning, by 3 brothers with their grandfather's blood on their hands. Almost. Because one giant, Bergelmir, would climb onto a hollowed tree trunk with his wife and ride the tide of blood and survive. He would drift into the far mists, and there he would raise new generations of giants, generations that would remember. Hold on to that. Every giant in the rest of this story, every enemy that comes for the gods out of the frost, every army that marches at the end of the world, descends from the survivors of that flood. The Norse cosmos begins with an unpaid debt of blood, and in the Old North, blood debts did not expire. They gathered interest. But the brothers were not finished, because a corpse the size of a universe is not a crime scene. It is building material. They dragged Ymir's body into the center of the void, and they went to work. From his flesh they made the earth, the soil, the fields, the wide green lands. From his blood they made the sea, wringing the land on every side. His bones they piled into mountains. His teeth and shattered jaw became gravel, scree, and stone. They lifted his skull, his entire skull, and set it over the world as the dome of the sky, and at its 4 corners they stationed 4 dwarves to hold it up, north, south, east, and west. His brains they threw into the air, and they drift there still. Grey, heavy, formless. You have seen Ymir's brains. You call them clouds. Then the brothers caught sparks drifting out of Muspelheim, the fire realm, and pinned them to the inside of the skull. And those became the stars. They took 2 of the brightest embers and set them in chariots, driven across the sky by 2 divine children, a girl named Sol driving the sun, and her brother Mani driving the moon. But why would the sun and moon keep moving? Why would they never rest, never slow, never stop to look down at the world? Because the gods gave them a reason to run. 2 wolves were set loose in the sky, Skoll and Hati, born of a giantess in an iron forest in the east. One hunts the sun, one hunts the moon. Every hour of every day of every age of the world, the wolves are behind them, jaws open, gaining. Daylight in this mythology is not a gift. It is a chase that has not ended yet. And on the day the wolves finally catch what they hunt, you will know the end has come. The Old North looked up at a solar eclipse and believed the wolf's jaws were closing, and they would scream at the sky to scare him off. It always worked, until the day it wouldn't. Last of all, the brothers looked at the maggots crawling through the dead flesh of Ymir. And even those they refused to waste. They gave them minds and skill and shape and sent them down into the dark under the mountains. Those became the dwarves, the finest craftsmen the universe would ever hold, born from corpse worms, forever underground, forever resentful, forever brilliant. Every weapon that matters in this story will come from their forges. Remember where they came from. And around the Middle Lands, the gods raised a wall, built from the eyelashes of the dead giant, to fence off a safe realm for beings not yet created. They called the place within the wall Midgard, the middle enclosure. You live there. That is this world's name for Earth. So stand back and look at what the sons of Bor had made, a world of astonishing beauty. Green earth, silver sea, a sky full of stolen fire, and every inch of it built from the body of a murdered ancestor. The mountains are his bones, the sea is his blood, the sky you walk under is the inside of his skull. Now, some of you have been with this channel since the beginning, and you might be feeling an echo. In our story of Chinese mythology, a giant named Pangu also became the world, his breath the wind, his eyes the sun and moon. But listen to the difference, because it is the difference that defines everything ahead. Pangu gave his body. He labored holding up the sky until his heart burst, and the world was his gift. Ymir gave nothing. Ymir's body was taken. Other mythologies begin with a sacrifice. This one begins with a crime, and the gods knew it. That is the thing about the North. It never pretended otherwise. The Norse did not believe their world was innocent. They believed it was beautiful, and they believed it was stolen, and they believed that someday someone would come to collect all the glory that follows. The golden halls, the feasts, the wars, the wisdom. Every bit of it is built on a foundation of spilled blood that was never paid for. The gods built paradise out of a body, and bodies are remembered. But a world is not finished when the land is laid and the stars are hung. A world needs an order to hold it together. A shape, a center, a spine. And the spine of this universe was not a mountain and not a throne. It was a tree. Picture the largest living thing you can imagine. A redwood, maybe. 30 stories of wood and silence. Now grow it until its branches hang over the entire sky, until its roots reach down through the floor of reality itself, until every world that exists, every realm of gods, giants, humans, and the dead, hangs in its branches like fruit. The Norse called it Yggdrasil, the world tree, an ash tree so vast that the universe is simply the space it occupies. There is no throne at the center of Norse reality, no palace, no mountain of the gods. At the center of everything, there is a living thing, growing, aching, shedding, enduring. And that choice tells you exactly how the North understood existence. The universe is not a kingdom, it is an organism, and organisms can die. 9 worlds hung in the branches and roots of the great tree. Highest of all sat Asgard, realm of the gods, a land of golden halls and endless sky, which we will enter soon enough. Below it stretched Midgard, the walled world of men, and the two were joined by a bridge unlike any other. Bifrost, a burning arc of 3 colors built from fire, air, and water. Humans would catch sight of it after a storm, hanging impossibly across the sky, and they would understand. The rainbow is a road, and roads mean someone can come down, or up. Around the human world spread the other realms. Jotunheim, land of the giants. Mountains and old forests where the survivors of Ymir's flood bred their long grudge. Vanaheim, home to a second, older tribe of gods. Remember that. It matters soon. Alfheim of the Light Elves. Svartalfheim, the underground realm of dwarves, ringing day and night with hammers. Niflheim, the primordial ice. Muspelheim, the primordial fire, where Surtur still stood, sharpening his patience. And lowest of all, wrapped in mist and silence, a realm of the dead that we will not speak of yet. Because someone has to rule it first. But it is the roots of the tree where this story keeps its secrets. 3 roots plunging into 3 wells. Beneath the first root lay the well of Urd, the well of fate. And beside that well lived 3 sisters, and if you take nothing else from this chapter, take them. The Norns. One was named Urd. What has become? One was named Verdandi. What is becoming? One was named Skuld. What shall be? Every morning they drew water from the well and poured it over the roots of the tree to keep it from rotting. And they carved. Into the living wood of Yggdrasil they carved the fate of every being in the universe, every god, every giant, every man, woman, and child. Carved. Not written in ink, which smears, not spoken, which fades. Cut into wood, the way you cut something you do not intend to take back. Even the gods could not argue with what the Norns carved. Odin himself, in all his power, could not add 1 hour to a life the sisters had measured. When the gods wanted to know the future, they did not command it. They asked, nervously. Beneath the second root, in the land of the giants, lay a different well. Dark, still, and deeper than falling. The well of Mimir. Its water held something more dangerous than fate, understanding, memory. The why beneath the world, one being guarded it. Mimir, oldest and wisest of all creatures, and he charged a price for even a single drink. What price? Hold that question. In the next chapter, someone is going to pay it, and the payment will define his face forever. And beneath the third root, in the frozen dark of Niflheim, seethed the spring called Vergelmir, where all rivers are born. But something lived in that darkness, coiled around the root itself, a dragon, Nidhogg, the malice striker, and day after day, age after age, Nidhogg did one thing with perfect, tireless devotion. He chewed, he gnawed the root of the world tree, working to bring the whole thing down. High above, at the crown of the tree, perched an eagle with a hawk sitting between its eyes, watching the worlds, and the dragon below hated the eagle above. Hated him without ever having met him. We know this because the tree had a messenger. A squirrel named Ratatosk ran up and down the trunk of the universe all day, every day, doing nothing. Nothing. Except carrying insults. Down from the eagle, the dragon is a coward who bites what cannot bite back. Up from the dragon, the eagle is a fat watchman who has never noticed anything in time. Ratatosk delivered every word, faithfully in both directions, forever. A rodent-powered engine of spite, keeping hatred alive at both ends of existence. The Norse looked at the axis of their entire cosmos and put a troll in the middle of it. Never let anyone tell you these people lacked a sense of humor, but under the joke, notice what they were actually saying. 4 stags chew the tree's leaves. Rot eats its bark. The dragon grinds its root. The wisest text the Norse left us says it plainly. Yggdrasil suffers more than men know. The tree that holds the universe together is under attack from every direction, always. And it is held together by 3 sisters with a bucket of water, patching it each morning, buying 1 more day. Each day. That is the Norse universe in a single image. Not a fortress, a wound tended daily. So here is a question worth sitting with. The gods knew all of this. They held their council at the Well of Urd every single day. They rode down Bifrost and gathered under those very branches. they could hear the tree groan. Why would beings of unlimited power build their golden home on a branch they knew was rotting? Because there was nowhere else. There is no outside in this mythology, no untouched heaven to retreat to. Everything that exists on the tree. The gods lived the way their believers lived, on borrowed ground, in a structure older than them and failing slowly, doing the day's work anyway. Keep that. It is the answer to a question you will want to ask at the end of this story. The gods themselves needed a home, and they built one. Asgard rose at the top of the tree. Walls first, then halls, each god raising a mansion of their own, silver-roofed Valaskjalf, bright Breidablik, where nothing unclean could enter. In the heart of it, Odin set his high seat, called Hlidskjalf, and Hlidskjalf had a property no other chair in existence possessed. Whoever sat in it could see everything. All 9 worlds at once. Every field, every hall, every hidden thing. Odin would sit there in the long evenings, silent, watching the whole of reality the way a farmer watches the sky before a storm. You would think a view like that would bring peace of mind. It brought the opposite. But that, too, is the next chapter. Because first, the gods went for a walk, and on a beach at the edge of the sea, 3 of them, Odin and 2 companions, came upon 2 logs of driftwood thrown up by the tide, 1 ash, 1 elm, dead wood, salt-bleached, half buried in sand. And the gods stopped. Odin breathed into the wood, and the logs began to breathe on their own, lungs filling, hearts starting like drums after silence. The second god gave them thought and will and the ability to move. The third gave them faces and speech and hearing and sight. The driftwood softened into skin. 2 beings sat up on the sand, naked at the edge of an empty world, and looked at each other for the first time. The man they named Ask, the ash tree, the woman Embla, the elm, and every human being who has ever lived, every king, every slave, every Viking, every person watching this, is, in this story, their child. The gods gave them Midgard, the walled world, and the wall was Ymir's own browbone, mankind sheltered from the giants behind the ruin of the being the gods had murdered. Notice what humans are made of here. Not clay like in China or Mesopotamia, not tears, not blood, not breath alone. Wood, the same substance as Yggdrasil itself. In the entire universe of this mythology, exactly 2 things are made of living wood, the tree that holds all the worlds, and you. Whatever holds the universe together, the Norse were saying, you are a splinter of it, and when the last battle comes and the fire takes everything, remember the wood. Wood has one property that gods and giants do not. Wood can be hidden. Wood can survive a fire if someone plants it deep enough. But that is the far end of the story. Here, at its beginning, the worlds are new. The tree is strong. Humanity is 2 people on a beach. And up in Asgard, the one-eyed king on the all-seeing throne is not enjoying the view. He is scanning it. Because of all the gods who ever were, in any mythology humans have carried, this one had a burden none of the others chose to bear. He wanted to know how it ends. Every mythology has a king of the gods, and you already know the type. Zeus hurls thunder from a mountain and takes what he wants. Ra sails the sky in golden, untouchable glory. The Jade Emperor from our last story administrates heaven from behind a perfect desk. Odin is none of these things. Picture him instead as the Old North pictured him, a tall figure on a mountain road at dusk in a travel-stained blue cloak, hat pulled low over a missing eye. A wanderer with a spear that never misses, walking into the wind. The king of the gods, in this mythology, is rarely on his throne. He is out there, In disguise, under false names, knocking on doors in the dark, asking questions. He has more than 100 recorded names because he lied about who he was that often. Wanderer, Masked One, Truthfinder, Warfather, Hanged God. Hold that last one. We'll get there. It is not a metaphor. Because Odin was built differently from every other king of heaven, and the difference was this: he was afraid, not of any enemy he could see from the high seat. No giant, no army, no monster. He was afraid of the one thing Hlidskjalf could not show him: tomorrow. The Norns knew what was carved. The wells under the tree held the shape of what was coming. And Odin, watching his young, golden, doomed family laughing in the halls of Asgard, decided he would rather be broken by the truth than comforted by ignorance. What follows are the 3 prices he paid, and they get steeper as they go. The first price was his eye. He traveled alone, disguised, down through the marches of the giant lands to the root of the world tree and the still black water of Mimir's well, where understanding itself pooled in the dark. Old Mimir sat beside it, and he knew exactly who this traveler was, and Odin asked for a single drink. Mimir named his price without hesitation, the way someone does when they have been waiting years to name it. An eye, not any eye, your own, into the well. And the Norse, notice, do not soften this scene, so neither will we. There was no magic to it, no painless shimmer. Odin stood at the edge of the water and did it with his own hand. He tore out his own eye, he dropped it into the well where it sank slowly out of the light, and it lies there still at the bottom of the water, seeing whatever the dark sees. And then Mimir dipped a horn into the well, and Odin drank. What did he get for half the light he would ever see? Understanding, the long view, the why beneath the world. And here is the detail that makes it genuinely great myth-making. Ask yourself what a man with one eye loses. Depth. Flat, foreshortened sight. That is the joke and the truth folded into this story. Odin traded the depth of the world in front of him for the depth of the world beneath him. Every day for the rest of existence, he would see the surface of things a little worse, and the meaning of things a little better. The wisest being in the universe has one eye, because wisdom, the North insisted, is not a gift. It is an amputation. But understanding was not enough, because understanding tells you why things happen. It doesn't give you power over what happens next. For that, Odin needed something buried deeper than any well. He needed the runes. The runes were not letters, not really. Not to the Norse. They were the source code of reality, the shapes underneath things, the pattern that makes iron hard and grief heavy, the marks fate itself is carved in. The Norns knew them, no god did, and the runes could not be bought, could not be stolen, could not be taught. They only reveal themselves to the dead. So the second price was this. Odin went to the world tree, the great ash, Yggdrasil, whose name, by the way, means Odin's horse, and you are about to learn why. And he hanged himself from its branches. He drove his own spear into his side, wounded and bleeding. He hung in the wind over the abyss between the worlds. No food, no water, no help. He forbade help. The poem that preserves this is spoken in Odin's own voice, and it is one of the strangest, coldest passages in world literature. I know that I hung on the windy tree 9 long nights, wounded with a spear given to Odin, myself given to myself. 9 nights, dying by his own hand as a sacrifice to himself. The god of the hanged, hanging, and on the 9th night, at the bottom of that agony, at the border where God and corpse touch, he looked down into the dark, and the dark had shapes in it, the runes glowing beneath everything like embers under ash. He screamed. The poem says he took them up screaming, and then he fell back out of death into his own body, alive, changed, carrying the alphabet of power itself. Everything Odin does from this point forward, the spells, the battle magic, the words that wake the dead and still the sea. All of it comes from those 9 nights. He did not inherit his power. He did not receive it. He died into it. Myself, given to myself. No kindly heaven handing down gifts. A god alone on a tree, buying reality's secrets with his own execution. And still it was not enough. An eye for understanding, a death for power. The third price was not paid once. It is being paid continuously, forever. The third price was rest. 2 ravens rode Odin's shoulders. Their names were Hugin and Munin. Thought and memory. Every morning at dawn he would fling them into the sky, and they would fly across all 9 worlds, over every battlefield and every threshold, and return at evening to whisper into his ears everything they had seen. The first surveillance network in mythology, the All-Father's eyes, replacing the one he gave away, multiplied and airborne. But listen to what Odin himself says about them, because it is the most human sentence any king of gods ever spoke. Every day I fear for Hugin, that he may not come back, yet I fear more for Munin. I fear for thought, but I fear more for memory. The god who sacrificed everything for knowledge, admitting quietly that each morning, when he opens his hand and lets his mind fly out into the world, he is not sure it will come home. The Old North knew exactly what it was describing. Anyone who has watched a grandfather's memory fly away and not return knows it too. Even the gods, this mythology says, hold their minds on loan. So now ask the question this whole chapter has been circling. Why? Why would the king of a golden, victorious heaven mutilate himself, hang himself, and live in perpetual anxious vigilance? The Greeks would call it madness. Zeus never gave Olympus one sleepless night. The answer is in what Odin learned. Somewhere in the runes, in the well, in the whispers of the wise. The shape of the future opened to him, and the shape had a name, Ragnarok, the doom of the gods. He learned that the world would end, and how. That the wolf would come for him specifically. That the sun would be swallowed, the tree would shake, and the sons of the murdered giant would collect their debt in full. He learned, in other words, that he would lose, and this is where Odin becomes quietly one of the most remarkable figures in any mythology on earth. Because he did not accept it, and he did not deny it. He did something else. He started preparing for a war he knew he could not win. Look again at everything you have just seen with that key in your hand, and watch it all turn. The eye, the tree, the ravens, not a scholar's curiosity, intelligence gathering. And now the strangest institution in Asgard finally makes sense, Valhalla. You have heard of Valhalla, the golden hall of Odin, roofed with shields, where warriors who die in battle feast forever. It has been sold to you as the Viking heaven, a reward, an eternal party. Now look closer. Odin's servants in this were the Valkyries, the choosers of the slain. Armored women riding over battlefields, deciding who would fall that day, and gathering not the survivors, but the dead. The chosen, called Einherjar, would wake each dawn in Valhalla, put on armor, march out, and slaughter one another. All day, every day, full war until every man was hacked apart. At dusk they would rise whole, sit together, and feast on a boar that resurrects each night, and mead that flows from a goat. Then dawn, then war again. Forever. That is not a party. That is a training rotation with no discharge date. Odin was not rewarding heroes, he was drafting them. Every battlefield death in the human world fed his ranks. One more soldier collected against the last day. The hall has 540 doors, the poems say, and through each of them, when the final morning comes, 800 warriors will march out side by side. Do that arithmetic and you get an army of hundreds of thousands. An army of the dead, harvested from every war humans ever fought, stockpiled against the wolf. Some traditions say the gods take only half of each battle slain. Freya, a goddess you will meet soon, claims the other half. Odin took what he could get. He was not building a heaven, he was building an arsenal, out of us, and the old Norse knew it. That is the extraordinary part. The warrior cultures of the North went into battle knowing their god was collecting them for his own doomed war. It did not offend them. It was the highest honor they could imagine, to be chosen as a soldier for the last morning of the universe. When we reach that morning, and we will remember what Valhalla was for. The doors are going to open, so there is your king of the gods, one eye, a scarred side, 2 ravens he counts home nervously each evening, like an old man counting his keys, a hall full of dead men rehearsing, the wisest being in the universe, and all his wisdom kept circling the same locked door. The door with the wolf behind it. The God of wisdom's first great lesson costs nothing to hear and everything to learn. Everything true costs exactly what you cannot afford to lose. But Asgard was not all vigils and dread. Far from it. It was loud and golden, and it shook with laughter and hammer blows and family. Odin had sons, and one of them was everything his father was not. Simple where Odin was subtle, honest where Odin was masked, beloved where Odin was feared. A god with red hair, a terrible temper, and no talent whatsoever for secrets. The giants had a name for him. They would whisper it, looking east at a gathering storm. Thor. Every pantheon has its strongest arm, but no god in any mythology was ever loved the way the North loved Thor. Odin was for kings, poets, and the ambitious dead. Thor was for everyone else, the farmer watching the sky for rain, the sailor in a storm, the settler carving a homestead out of a hostile land. Archaeologists keep finding his hammer, small silver and iron amulets worn at the neck from Iceland to Russia, in graves of men, women, and children alike. When Christianity arrived with its cross pendants, the smiths of the North quietly ran both product lines out of the same workshop. Same silver, different god. The market decides slowly. Thor was the son of Odin and, in the old poems, of the earth herself. And he looked the part, red-bearded, mountain-shouldered, with an appetite that emptied larders and a temper that emptied rooms. He was not clever, and this story will be honest with you about that. He was something rarer. He was reliable. In a family of schemers, prophets, and shapeshifters, Thor was the one god who, when the monsters came, simply stood in the doorway. But the doorway needs a weapon. And the story of how Thor got his hammer begins, as the worst days in Asgard so often begin. With a bored trickster and a pair of scissors. There was a god in Asgard we have not properly met yet, and it is time. Loki. Remember the pattern of this family. Odin's own mother was a giantess. Loki went one step further. Both his parents were giants. He lived among the gods, sworn to them, charming, brilliant, restless. A blood oath brother to Odin himself, bound by an old vow the poems never fully explain. Whatever that oath was, it made him family. He was the cleverest being in Asgard, and Asgard never let him forget he did not quite belong. Hold both of those facts. They are load-bearing. One morning, Loki looked at Sif, Thor's wife, whose golden hair fell past her waist and was famous in 9 worlds. And for no reason any poem records beyond the itch of mischief while she slept. He cut it all off, to the scalp. Thor's reaction was not complicated. He located Loki, lifted him off the ground, and began, the sources are matter of fact here, to break every bone in his body, one at a time, until Loki produced a solution. The solution was dwarves. Down in Svartalfheim, said Loki, the sons of Ivaldi could forge hair from actual gold, finer than the real thing. And they could. They spun a headpiece of living gold that would root and grow. And while the forge was hot, they made 2 more marvels. A ship, Skidbladnir, that always found fair wind and folded up like cloth to fit in a pouch, and a spear, Gungnir, that could not miss. That spear went to Odin. It is the one he will carry to the end. Loki now had everything he came for, which is precisely when he could not stop. He found another pair of dwarven brothers, Brokkr and Eitri, and waved the treasures in their faces. Nothing in your forge could match these. He bet on it. And the stake, because Loki never gambled small, was his own head. Eitri set to work, while Brokkr pumped the bellows, and Loki, having second thoughts about his skull, cheated. He became a biting fly. As the forge roared, the fly stung Brokkr's hand, and out of the fire came a boar with bristles of gold that could run through night sky and open sea. The fly stung his neck, and out came Draupnir, a gold ring that dripped 8 identical rings every 9th night. Wealth that breeds. Then Eitri laid iron in the fire and told his brother, "This one is everything. Do not stop." And the fly went for the one place a man cannot ignore, the eyelid, and bit down to the blood, and for one instant Brokkr's rhythm broke. Out of the fire came a war hammer of compressed iron thunder, head like an anvil's grudge, grip that would answer only one hand in the universe, and a handle, one fist too short. The single flaw in the single greatest weapon ever forged, and it is Loki's tooth mark. That is Loki's signature on this entire mythology. Nothing he touches fails outright. It works. With a flaw that surfaces later, at the worst possible moment. The gods judged the contest. Golden hair, wonder ship, unmissable spear. Against boar, breeding ring, and... They named the hammer Mjolnir, put it in Thor's hand, and declared the bet lost. Loki owed his head. Watch him work, one clause at a time. My head, yes. But the bet said nothing about my neck. Touch the neck, and the deal is void. The dwarves, outlawyered, settled for what the contract allowed. They took an awl and sewed Loki's lips shut. Asgard, the poems admit, found the silence restful. So now Thor is armed, and the border of the world has a warden. Mjolnir could crack a mountain and return to the hand that threw it. Lightning, the North understood, was the flash of it thrown. Thunder was the wheels of Thor's goat-drawn chariot. And yes, goats. 2 of them, Tangrisnir and Tangjoster, and they carry one of this mythology's strangest mercies. On the road, Thor would slaughter and eat them for supper, then bless the bones with the hammer at dawn. And they would stand up whole and pull the chariot on. Endless provisions, one rule, do not break the bones. One night, a farmer's boy named Thialfi, hosting the god at his family's table, secretly split a leg bone for the marrow. At sunrise, one goat rose lame, and Thor's knuckles went white on the hammer shaft. And then, watch this god the poets call simple. He looked at the terrified family, and he took a breath. And he took the boy and his sister into his service instead of taking the farm off the map. Thor's anger, unlike his father's plans, could be survived, but now comes the story the North told about Thor most often. And it is not a victory. It is the most sophisticated story in this entire mythology, and it is about the exact thing Thor trusted most, his own strength. Thor went east to Jotunheim, to the stronghold of a giant king called Utgard Loki. No relation, just a name that should have been a warning. With him, Loki and the boy Thjalfi, fastest runner in Midgard. On the way, they sheltered overnight in a strangely shaped hall, wide as a hillside, with one huge side room. All night the ground heaved with a rumbling they could not name. At dawn, they found the source, a giant so large they had slept in his glove. The side room was the thumb. The rumbling was snoring. The giant walked with them, and at night while they starved, his knots on the food bag could not be untied by divine hands. Thor, humiliated and furious, hit him across the skull with Mjolnir. Full force. The giant stirred. Did a leaf fall? Thor hit him twice more through the night, the last one hard enough to end a war. The giant sat up. An acorn, maybe? Then he pointed them toward the fortress and ambled away, and the fear the travelers felt walking on was of a new and unfamiliar kind. In Utgard's hall, the giant king lounged with his court and set the terms with a smile. No one stays who cannot beat someone here at something. Loki went first. He could out-eat anyone alive. They matched him against a lean creature named Logi. Both devoured a trough of meat from opposite ends and met in the middle. But Loki had eaten the meat, and Logi had eaten the meat, the bones, and the trough itself. Thjalfi, fastest thing on two legs, raced a slip of a being called Hugi and was beaten 3 times, each worse than the last. Then Thor. First, a drinking horn. A long one, but modest. "Empty it in one pull," said the king. "A poor drinker needs 3. Thor drank like the sea was in debt to him. The level barely moved, 3 pulls, chest heaving, and the horn was still nearly full. Then, lift my cat off the floor. A party trick for children. A large grey cat arched as Thor heaved beneath it with the strength that cracks mountains, and all he could raise was 1 paw. The court sniggered. Thor, black with rage, demanded a wrestling match. The king summoned an old woman, his nurse, Ellie, bent, grey, mild, and the old woman took hold of the god of thunder, and the harder he gripped, the calmer she stood, and slowly, gently, inevitably, she forced the strongest being in the universe down onto 1 knee. The king called it off, almost kindly. Enough. And in the morning, walking his guests out, Utgard Loki gave them the truth. The way you hand someone a knife. Everything was illusion. The giant on the road was the king himself. The 3 hammer blows had been diverted into a mountain, which now has 3 square valleys in it. Loki, who out-ate Loki, was wildfire. Nothing devours like fire. Hugi, who outran Thjalfi, was thought itself. No legs outrun a thought. The horn's far end stood in the ocean. Thor had drunk so deep that every shoreline in the world had dropped. Humans would find the sea lower twice a day forever after and call it the tide. The cat. And here, the king's voice, the poem suggests, lost its comedy. The cat was the Midgard serpent, the world-circling monster you are about to meet. And when Thor raised its paw, he had pulled the serpent's back up against the sky, and every being in the hall had been afraid. And Ellie. Old age. She takes everyone, Thunderer. The strongest of all managed what no one manages. He went down to 1 knee and no further. Then the king vanished and the fortress vanished, and Thor stood in an empty green plain with his hammer in his hand and nothing to hit. Sit with what the North is doing here, because no other mythology does it to its favorite son. This is the Norse thesis in miniature, aimed at their most beloved god, There are opponents strength does not touch. Fire, thought, the ocean, old age. Thor could win any fight that could be fought, and the universe is mostly made of things that cannot be. The Greeks would never tell this story about Heracles losing to a grandmother and being laughed at by the room. The North told it about Thor constantly and loved him more for it. A god who can be humbled is a god who understands what the last morning will ask of him. But one thread from that hall would not let Thor go. The cat, the Midgard serpent, Jormungandr. You will learn where it comes from in the next chapter, and the answer is worse than you think. What Thor knew was this. At the bottom of the sea lay a serpent so long it circled the entire world of men and bit its own tail. A living noose around humanity, growing, and Thor had touched it once, in a lie, and been mocked for it. So he went fishing. He arrived, disguised, for once in his life, subtle, at the hall of a sea giant named Hymir, and rowed out at dawn in Hymir's boat, past every fishing ground, past the giant's rising protests, out to where the water turns black and breathes. For bait, he had brought the head of an ox, torn off. The poems specify, with his hands. He threaded it on a hook the size of a ship's anchor and let it sink into the dark, and down at the floor of the world, something let go of its own tail and took the hook. The strike nearly tore the boat under. Thor braced. And here the old verse goes to present tense, so we will too. His heels crack the planking, punch through the hull, and find the seabed itself. The god of thunder stands on the bottom of the ocean, hauling, and the line comes up. And out of the boiling sea rises the head of the Midgard serpent, venom running from it like water off a roof, eyes older than the shoreline, a head the size of a hall. And Thor looks at the serpent, and the serpent looks at Thor. Every poet of the North painted this stare. Across the gunwale of a leaking rowboat in the middle of an empty ocean, the storm meeting the sea, the defender of mankind eye to eye with the noose around it. Thor's hand went for the hammer. One clean blow, and half of the last morning's grief dies here, today, cheap. And Hymir, a giant, in a small boat, closer to that head than any living being wished to be, panicked, leaned across, and cut the line. The serpent sank. The dark of the sea folded over it. The poems say Thor threw the giant overboard as commentary and waded home across the sea floor. But hold the image that matters, not the fight. There was no fight. The look. The serpent went down unfought into the black with the taste of the hook in its mouth, and it began to grow. They would meet again. Both of them knew it. That is what the stare was. Everyone in this story knows how their appointment ends. The seeress published the guest list ages ago. Thor and the serpent had simply met early, checked the fit. One more thing before we leave him, because you carry Thor with you and may not know it. The Romans, matching foreign gods to their own, filed him beside Jupiter. And when the days of the week crossed into the north, Jupiter's day became Thor's day. Say it faster. Thursday. You have been keeping the storm god's appointment your whole life. But now the bill for this chapter comes due. A cat that was a serpent that circles your world. A question this story has been letting you not ask. Who put a world-strangling monster in the sea outside mankind's wall? Who does it belong to? You already know the answer. You met him at the top of this chapter, holding scissors. It gets worse. The serpent has siblings. Let us talk honestly about Loki, because everything from here to the end of the world runs through him. The easy version calls him evil. and the easy version is useless. Evil doesn't explain a being who saved Asgard as often as he endangered it. You just watched him procure the gods their spear, their ship, their hammer. The gods kept him close for the same reason every story keeps him close. He could think his way out of rooms the rest of them could only smash. Odin swore blood brotherhood with him, mixed blood in an open oath, vowing never to take a drink unless Loki was offered one too. The wisest being in the universe looked at the cleverest and said, "Family." But Loki had another family. In the iron forests east of the world, he kept a mistress, a giantess named Angerboda. Her name means she who brings grief. And with her in the dark, Loki fathered 3 children. The first was a girl. From the waist up, she was a quiet, grave-eyed woman. From the waist down, the poems say it without flinching. The flesh was blue-black and rotting. A child born half alive and half corpse, and her name was Hel. The second child was a serpent. The third was a wolf pup. For a while, the children simply grew. And then the prophecies started coming in. The seeresses and the runes began to speak of 3 shapes at the end of the world, a ruler of the dead standing against the gods, a serpent in the sea poisoning the sky, a wolf with jaws from earth to heaven, open for the All-Father himself. The gods traced the omens east to the iron wood, to a nursery. Put yourself in that council chamber honestly before you judge what happens next. You are told, by sources that have never been wrong, that these 3 children will one day destroy everything you love. You can see them from Hlidskjalf, the girl, the snake, the pup. What do you do? Here is what the gods did. Odin ordered the children brought to Asgard. Then the family of the gods looked at Loki's children and dealt with them. The serpent, Jormungandr, they took to the edge of the sky and threw into the ocean. It did not die. It sank to the seafloor and did the only thing an abandoned thing can do down there. It ate and it grew. It grew until it wrapped the whole human world and found in the darkness its own tail. You have already seen it on the end of a fishing line. The gods made the noose themselves and dropped it, loaded, around Midgard. The girl, Hel, Odin cast down into the mist world of Niflheim, beneath the lowest root of the tree. But for her he added something almost worse than exile, a title. She was made Queen of the Dead. Of all the dead who do not die in battle, the sick, the old, the drowned, the starved, the ordinary, millions upon millions forever hers. Half a corpse, ruling a nation of corpses, in a hall the poem's name damp with sleet, where the plate is called hunger, and the knife is called famine, and the bed curtains are named glimmering misfortune. She was a child when she was sent there. She never came back. She simply began, patiently, silently, eternally, to receive. Remember what Odin's own paradise was, a hall for gathering the dead. He gave the grief woman's daughter the same office in the basement of the universe. Valhalla for the chosen, hell for everyone else. The 2 great warehouses of the dead stocked in parallel, waiting for the same morning. And the wolf? Here the gods did something stranger. The wolf pup. Fenrir. They kept. They raised him in Asgard, in the open, on the green. Maybe it was mercy. Maybe Odin wanted the prophecy where he could see it. And the pup grew, friendly, bright-eyed, bounding after the gods across the courts of heaven. But he grew fast, unnaturally fast. Month by month, the bounding thing put on mass like a rumour, until his shoulders stood higher than the walls, until his play growl loosened stones from towers, until only one god in all of Asgard still had the courage to walk up to him with food. Tyr. And you need to meet Tyr properly. because what is coming only cuts if you know him. Tyr was the god of war, but more than that, of the sworn word, of oaths, courts, and treaties, of the difference between a battle and a brawl. Warriors carved his rune into sword hilts for victory with honor. In a family of masked kings and shapeshifters, Tyr was the one being in the universe whose word was simply good. Every day, this god of honesty carried meat to the wolf. Every day, the enormous head lowered to him and knew him and ate from his hands. Whatever trust means between a doomed monster and a doomed god, they had it. And every day, the wolf was measured against the prophecy, and every day, the gap closed. So the gods convened again and decided on a lie. Not a killing. The poems are specific and strange here. The gods would not shed the wolf's blood on their own holy ground. They had murdered a grandfather to build the world, but this, blood of a guest on the grass of Asgard, even they would not carry. Instead, a game. "We will bind you," they told Fenrir in fetters as a test of your famous strength, "and cheer as you shatter them." Fenrir agreed. They brought a chain called lading, heavy as a ship's anchor line. He let them wind it on, stretched, and it burst like rotten thread. They forged another dromi, twice the iron. He snapped it so hard the shards are proverbs, and each time the gods cheered the wolf's triumph. Smiling, applauding, sweating. Then Odin sent a runner down to the dwarves, and the dwarves, the corpse worm smiths, who owed the gods nothing and made miracles anyway, produced not a chain, but a ribbon, soft as silk, thin as a whisper, called Gleipnir. It was woven, the story goes, from 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. Which is the mythology winking at you and being deadly serious in the same breath. The unbreakable thing is made of everything that doesn't exist. The wolf would be bound, in the end, by nothing you could point to. Doubt, absence, the trick itself. The gods took Fenrir to an island in a black lake, held up the ribbon and, laughing, so carefully laughing, proposed one last test. Snap this silly thing. And Fenrir looked at the ribbon, and Fenrir, who had grown up watching gods smile, understood. "There is no glory in tearing a thread," he said, "and if it does not tear, I notice no one here looks worried enough. So bind me if you like. But first, as a pledge of good faith, one of you puts his hand in my mouth." Silence, the poem says, a long one. The gods of heaven stood on the shore of the black lake and did arithmetic, and one by one they finished it and looked away. All except the one god whose whole being was the keeping of pledges. Present tense, now. This is the moment the North built this entire chapter to hold. Tyr steps forward. He does not make a speech. He looks at the wolf he has fed from a pup, and the wolf looks at him, and both of them understand. This is the pledge that ends. Tyr lays his right hand, the sword hand, the oath hand, the hand that touches nothing falsely, between the teeth. The gods wind the soft ribbon around the wolf's legs, and Fenrir stretches. The ribbon holds. The wolf surges. The island shakes. The ribbon tightens. The harder he fights, the finer and colder it draws, biting down to the bone of a being the size of a hill. Fenrir is bound. He is bound forever. And the gods. The poem gives us this in one line, with a lifetime inside it. The gods all laughed, except Tyr. The jaws closed. The god of the sworn word paid the wolf what the god's word had come to be worth, and from that day the North's god of justice had one hand, and their word for the wrist joint was wolf joint ever after. The gods drove the ribbon's chain through a stone slab and hammered it a mile into the earth, and Fenrir screamed and snapped at every reaching thing, so they wedged a sword upright between his jaws, hilt on the tongue, point in the palate, and left him. Pinned open-mouthed under the world, howling around steel, drooling a river that the poems say runs from his mouth until doomsday. The name of the river means expectation. Fenrir did not hate the gods when they raised him. He learned it from them. And now stand back and look at what the family of the gods actually accomplished, because this is the engine of the whole mythology, and it must be said plainly. They were told a daughter of Loki would rule the dead against them. So they crowned her queen of the dead. They were told a serpent would rise from the sea. So they put the serpent in the sea and gave it centuries to grow. They were told a wolf would devour Odin. So they took a pup that ate from a god's hand and betrayed him on an island and chained him under the earth with steel in his mouth and a name like expectation running cold beside him, and left him alone with nothing to do but grow and remember. Every step the gods took to prevent the prophecy is a step that built it. The fear of the wolf made the wolf. Ragnarok was not scheduled by the Norns. It was assembled piece by piece by the terrified hands of the wise. So, who really caused the end of the world? The monsters, or the gods who looked at 3 children and saw monsters? The North never answers. The North just shows you Tyr, quietly learning to hold a sword in his left hand, and moves on. Because up in the golden halls, life went on the way it does over every buried thing. There were wars to end and weddings to survive, walls to build and apples to steal. The middle chapters of a doomed family are still, and this is the mythology's strangest mercy, full of joy. But 3 debts now sat in the dark, breathing. A queen filing the dead, a serpent circling, a wolf waiting for a ribbon woven from nothing to fray, and their father, sewn-lipped, laughed at, indispensable, unforgiven. Watched the gods laugh on the island that day, and said nothing at all. Before the shadows lengthen, you should see Asgard in its glory, because the gods, whatever else they were, knew how to live, but even their golden age, watch closely, is stitched together with debts. This chapter is the story of 5 bargains. Every one of them will be paid for at the end of the world. The first bargain ended a war we have not talked about. The first war in history, older than most of the stories you have heard so far. Because the Aesir, Odin's tribe, were not the only gods. Out of Vanaheim came the Vanir, older powers, gods of soil and seed, gold and desire, tides and harvest, and the 2 tribes of heaven went to war. The poems keep the cause half in shadow. A golden witch named Gulveig came among the Aesir, and they feared what she stirred in them, and they speared her and burned her in Odin's own hall. 3 times burned. 3 times she stepped out of the ashes, smiling, and between the burning and the fear, all diplomacy died. Odin himself opened the war, hurling his spear over the Vanir host, a gesture the North would imitate on human battlefields for 1,000 years. And heaven learned something about itself. The war could not be won. The Vanir tore down Asgard's wall, the Aesir wasted the fields of Vanaheim, and after ages of mutual ruin, the 2 divine nations did the most human thing in this entire mythology. They got tired. They met and made peace and sealed it the old way, with hostages. To Asgard came 3 Vanir, and you need all 3 names. Njord, lord of the sea's wealth, of harbours and fair sailing. His son, Frey. Remember Frey, god of sunshine and growing things, of peace and plenty, the god the poems call most beloved. and Frey's twin sister Freya, goddess of love and of war both, the great sorceress who taught even Odin his deepest magic, who rode a chariot drawn by cats and wept tears of red gold, and who, remember this from Valhalla, claimed half of every battle's dead for her own hall. Love and death, one throne. The North saw no contradiction, and to Vanaheim the Aesir sent their own exchange. They sent Honir, a tall, handsome, kingly-looking god, and quietly packaged him with Mimir, the wisest being alive, to do his thinking for him. The Vanir made Honir a chieftain, and for a while all was well, until they noticed that at every council where Mimir was absent, their splendid new king answered every question the same way. Let others decide. The Vanir realized they had been sold a beautiful shell, and in the oldest recorded act of buyer's rage, they seized Mimir, the innocent half of the package, cut off his head and mailed it back to Odin. What would you or I do with the severed head of a friend? Grieve. Here is what Odin did. He took the head and treated it with herbs and songs and spoke runes over it. And the eyes opened, and the mouth spoke. Odin kept the head of Mimir, alive, awake, unrotting, beside a well at the root of the world, and for the rest of time, when the All-Father faced a question too deep for ravens, he would walk down alone in the dark and consult it, the wisest counsel in the universe, from the grey lips of a severed head. That is the first bargain, peace, purchased with a horror folded inside it. It set the pattern. The second bargain built the wall. Asgard's ramparts still lay in ruins from the war, and one day a lone builder rode up with an offer. He would raise a wall no giant could ever breach in a year and a half. His price, and you can hear the smile in it. The sun, the moon, and the goddess Freya as his wife. The gods should have thrown him off the bridge. Instead, and the poems name the voice that talked them into it. Loki. They got clever. They accepted, but gave him one winter only, and no man's help. Impossible. He would fail, they would keep a half-built wall for free, and cleverness would once again beat labor. Except the builder had not come alone. He had a stallion, Svadilfari, and by night the horse hauled stone the way avalanches haul snow. The wall rose at a pace that curdled the gods' smiles, and 3 days before the deadline, it lacked only the gateway. Freya wept gold. The gods convened and turned as one to the god whose idea this had been, and their proposal for Loki was short: fix this or die here. That night, as the stallion hauled the last stones, a mare stepped out of the birchwoods. Sleek, playful, maddening. Svadilfari snapped his traces and was gone until dawn, and the next night, and the next. The deadline passed with the gateway unfinished. The builder flew into a rage so vast it split his disguise. A mountain giant in Asgard, 3 days from owning the sky and the goddess of love. And Thor's hammer arrived before the sentence ended. The wall got finished, the giant got a funeral. But the mare did not come back for some months, and when she did, she came with a foal. Grey, long-legged, and the legs were the thing because there were 8 of them. Loki. And yes, this means exactly what you think it means. The trickster of heaven spent a season as a mare and gave birth, and the poems relate it without blinking. Presented the foal to Odin. It grew into Sleipnir, 8-legged storm of a horse, fastest thing that ever ran between the worlds, the All-Father's own mount, able to ride down roads even the dead use. File that away. Before this story ends, someone will ride Sleipnir to the land of the dead and back, on the most desperate errand this mythology ever records. The third bargain nearly cost the gods everything, and it starts with a lunch. Odin, Honir, and Loki traveling, an ox roasting that would not cook, and in the tree above, an eagle, far too large, offering to unstick the fire in exchange for a share. The share it took was most of the ox, and Loki, hungry and insulted, swung a staff at it. The staff stuck to the eagle. Loki's hands stuck to the staff, and the eagle flew, low, deliberately low, dragging the god of mischief through gravel and thorn across half a mountain range until he screamed for terms. The eagle, the storm giant Thjazi, of course, in feathers, named them Bring Me Idun and her apples. You have not met Idun because she never left home, a quiet goddess with an ash wood box, and in the box, apples. And the apples were the only thing in existence holding back time from the gods. Eat and stay young. Stop eating. And find out what the gods had never once had to feel. Loki, bleeding and dangling, swore the oath. And a week later, he led Idun out of Asgard's gate with a lie about better apples in a forest. And the sky darkened with wings, and she was gone. Nothing happened at first. That is the quiet horror the poems linger on. Days passed like days. And then a morning came when Freya looked at her hands, when Thor felt a stiffness in the shoulder that swings the hammer. Silver threaded the golden beards, the halls of the deathless filled with new sounds. Coughing, creaking, the shuffle of divine feet learning to be careful on stairs. The gods of the north were aging. Their immortality, they learned in one long, cold season, had never been a property. It was a subscription, and it had lapsed. The trace led, as every trace in this mythology leads, to Loki, last god seen with her. The council's offer had become a formula by now: fix this or die. So Loki borrowed Freya's falcon cloak, flew to Thjazi's mountain hall while the giant was out fishing, found Idun alone, shrank her, apples, box and all, into a nut, and flew for home with his wings on fire from effort. Behind him, the eagle gaining, huge. Ahead, the walls of Asgard, lined with aging gods, watching the two dots grow. And stacking along the rampart, mountains of wood shavings. The falcon crossed the wall and dropped like a stone. The gods struck fire to the shavings. And the wall of Asgard became a wall of flame, exactly as the eagle hit it. Thjazi crashed, burning inside the gate, and the gods, grey-bearded, arthritic, and absolutely done, killed him on the ground. Idun came home. The apples went around, youth flooded back into heaven like spring into a valley, and you would call it a happy ending, except that in this mythology, every body has a family. Weeks later, a figure in full war gear walked alone through Asgard's gate. Skadi, Thjazi's daughter, come from the mountains to price her father's blood. The gods, to their credit, did not reach for weapons. They reached for the ledger. Compensation was negotiated. Gold, yes. And Odin took Thjazi's eyes and threw them into the night sky as stars, which is either the most beautiful apology in mythology or the most chilling, and quite possibly both. But Skadi had two stranger demands. First, make me laugh. For grief had frozen her face. The gods managed it in the only way this family manages anything: Loki, a rope, and a billy goat, in an arrangement the poems describe with relish, and this channel will leave to your imagination. Even the Iron Daughter of the Mountains broke down, laughing. Second, a husband chosen from the gods, but she must choose by looking only at their feet. Skadi walked the line of curtained gods, staring at bare feet, and picked the finest pair, certain they belonged to the most beautiful of the gods. A god we meet in the next chapter. They belonged to Njord, lord of harbours, whose feet the sea had washed smooth for ages. The marriage of the mountain woman and the sea god lasted 18 nights, 9 in his hall, where the gulls woke her screaming, 9 in hers, where the wolves kept him from sleep, and ended by mutual, almost friendly, surrender. She went back to her snows and her skis and became the goddess of winter hunting on good terms with nearly everyone. The Norse knew some people marry the wrong landscape, and the fifth bargain, the smallest, the gentlest, the one that ends the world. Frey, the beloved, the summer god, the hostage prince who made Asgard brighter, climbed one idle day onto Odin's forbidden high seat, Hlidskjalf, just to see what the All-Father sees. Understand, the seat shows you everything. And in all 9 worlds of everything, Frey's eyes landed on one thing. Far north in Jotunheim, a giant's daughter named Gerd crossing a courtyard, and when she lifted her arms to unlatch a door, light stood off her skin. The poems say sky and sea brightened with it. One glimpse. The god of sunshine walked down from the seat, unable to speak, unable to eat, unable to sleep. The first recorded case of lovesickness in the north, and it hit a god. His household finally sent his servant Skirnir to ask what was wrong, and Frey confessed, a giantess, enemy blood, an impossible marriage, the kind of shame he could not even say aloud to his father. Skirnir offered to go north and woo her in Frey's name, and he named his fee, Frey's sword, not an ornament, the sword of Frey, a blade forged with a property no other weapon in existence had. It fought by itself. Against the fire that is coming at the end of all things, the poems are explicit. That sword was the one tool in heaven's arsenal that mattered. Skirnir asked for it the way you ask for a horse, and Frey, sick, 20 days into a hunger no apple could touch, handed it over. Was it worth it? The North, bless it, refuses to moralize. Skirnir rode north. Gerd said yes. After a wooing that began with apples and gold and ended with runic threats, we will politely skip. Frey met her 9 nights later in a barley field called Bari, and the summer god married the winter earth, and their marriage was, by every account, happy. The farmers of the north loved this story. It was their whole calendar. Sun weds soil, and everything grows. It costs 1 sword. But the seeress's tally does not skip lines, and centuries from now, on a burning plain, the most beloved of the gods will stand in the path of Surtur, the fire that was here before chapter 1, the sword brighter than the sun, and he will face it with an antler in his fist. Remember the sword, he will not have it. Love took it, 5 bargains, a severed head that whispers at the root of the world, an 8-legged horse that can reach the dead, a goddess of youth with a kidnapper's ash on her box, thrown eyes burning in the winter sky, and somewhere in a barley field, a sword-shaped hole in the armory of heaven, the golden age of Asgard in full. Do you see a villain anywhere in it? Look closely, there is none. There is only a family making trades, each one locally clever, each one reasonable at the price, the way families do. Nobody sold the end of the world. They financed it, on installments. And now the installments come due because we have reached the hinge of this entire mythology, everything so far. The murder, the tree, the wolf, the bargains. The North told all of it as the road to one single event. The poems call it the greatest misfortune ever to befall gods and men. It begins quietly, with the most beautiful being in the universe having a bad dream. His name was Baldur, and you have to understand what he was to them, or none of what follows will land the way it landed for 1,000 years of the North. Baldur was Odin's son, and Frigg's. Frigg, queen of Asgard, who could see every fate but was bound never to speak them. and Baldur was, by the flat testimony of every source, the best thing the universe had produced. The most beautiful of the gods, so bright that light stood off him, the wisest spoken, the most merciful, his hall the one place in all the worlds where nothing unclean had ever entered. The poems do not describe him so much as describe everyone else around him. How rooms changed when he walked in. In a pantheon of one-eyed schemers, bone-breakers and shape-shifting liars, there was exactly one god that everyone, simply loved. The North gave itself one flawless thing. Watch what it does with it. Baldur began to dream of his own death. Night after night, darkness, a closing, him gone. In any other mythology, a god's nightmare is weather. In this one, where dreams leak backward from the carved future, heaven convened in emergency session before dawn, and Odin, who already carried more of the truth than he ever said aloud, saddled the eight-legged horse and rode down the cold roads, past the hound with the bloody chest that bays at the gates of the dead, into hell's own country, to do the thing only he could do. At the eastern gate of the halls of the dead lay a grave older than memory, a seeress, a vulva buried ages deep. Odin stood over it and sang the rune songs that force the dead to speak, and the ground gave up its voice. Resentful, half-frozen, who wakes me? Rain has drenched me, and dew has rotted me. I have been dead a long time. He did not give his name. He asked one question. For whom are the benches in this hall being decked with rings and gold? And the dead woman answered, the mead is brewed for Baldur. The shining prince is expected. Now let me sleep. There it was. From below, from the house itself. The halls of the dead were setting the table. Odin asked who would do it, and the voice named a name we will hold for a few more minutes. And then the seeress through the earth looked harder at her visitor and knew him. And the interview ended with a door slam from the underworld. Ride home, Odin, and be proud of yourself. No one will wake me again. Until Loki slips his chains and the doom of the gods comes down. The All-Father rode home through the frost with the only prize wisdom ever wins in this mythology, confirmation. But Frigg had a different idea, and it is one of the most magnificent doomed ideas in world literature. The Queen of Heaven decided she would exempt her son from the universe, item by item. She went out. The poems mean this, literally, and took an oath from everything. From fire, that it would never burn Baldur. From water, that it would never drown him. From iron and every metal, from stones, from the earth itself, from trees, from sicknesses, one by one, from every beast, every bird, every crawling venomous thing. The mother of the gods walked the inventory of existence like a notary, and everything swore. And the universe, for one golden season, contained a single being that could not be harmed. How do gods respond to a miracle like that? Exactly the way their worshippers would have. They made it a party game. Baldur would stand in the middle of the assembly field, arms out, laughing, and the gods of heaven would throw things at him, knives, axes, boulders, full spear casts from the strongest arms in existence. Everything swerved or blunted or bounced. The oath held every time, and every impact broke into laughter. Imagine the sound of it drifting over the golden roofs, the gods of the north, in the last summer of the world, playing catch with their treasure, celebrating the one thing death had agreed to skip. Not everyone was laughing. One figure walked the edge of the field, watching the joy the way the landless watch a harvest. Loki. And the poems never say why. This is the abyss at the center of the mythology, and the honest answer is that the North left it open on purpose. Was it the old score from the island, the sewn lips, the centuries of fix this or die? Was it his children filed away in the sea and the dark? Was it simply that a universe with something perfect in it had become unbearable to him? The mythology hands you every motive and endorses none. What it records is what he did. Loki took the shape of an old woman and paid a social call on Frigg. And the two women talked, pleasantly at length, about the wonder of it all, the oaths, the security. And the Queen of Heaven, warm and proud and fatally at ease, mentioned, the way you mention a cute quirk, that there was one thing she had skipped, a little sprout growing west of Valhalla, mistletoe, too young to swear, she said, too small to matter. What could it do? A plant with no roots of its own that cannot even stand without holding on to a tree. The old woman agreed it was surely nothing, and stayed a little longer and left no earlier than politeness required. West of Valhalla, Loki cut the mistletoe and shaved it into a dart. Back at the field, the game was in full roar, and at the edge of the crowd stood a god who had never once joined it, Hod, Baldur's own brother. Tall, strong, and blind from birth. Loki drifted to his elbow, all warmth. Why not honor your brother like the rest? I'll guide your arm. And Hod, glad for once to be included, let the helpful voice set the little dart on his hand and aim it. Present tense now. It is the only way the North ever told this part. Hod throws. The dart crosses the field through the falling axes and the laughter. And it does not swerve. It passes through Baldur like a door left unlocked. The poems say straight through. And the brightest thing in the universe folds to the grass. And the light itself, goes out of the field. No one moves. That is the detail the prose account preserves, like a fly in amber. The gods stand there, in the place where the universe broke, and nobody moves. Because everyone understands two things at once. That Baldur is dead, and that they are standing on holy ground where vengeance is forbidden. With the weapons still in their hands. The silence stretches, and then snaps into the sound the poems flinch from describing, the gods of heaven trying to speak and managing only weeping. Odin says nothing at all. Odin, who knew, who had heard the benches being decked, is the one being on the field for whom this is not a surprise, and it destroys him, worst of all. The poem grants him one line of epitaph, the coldest measurement of grief in the language. He understood, better than any of them, what the death of Baldur meant. Not the loss of a son, the keystones slipping, the first domino of the doom. What follows is the greatest funeral in mythology. They bore Baldur down to the sea, to his own ship, Hringhorni, greatest of vessels. And heaven's grief had made heaven weak. All the gods together could not shift the hull. They had to send to the mountains, to their enemies, for help. And a giantess named Hyrrokin answered, riding a wolf bridled with living serpents, and she put her shoulder to the prow and launched the ship with one heave so violent the rollers caught fire and the earth shook. Thor's knuckles went white on the hammer. Grief in Thor had nowhere to live, except as rage. And when a dwarf named Lit happened to scurry past his feet at the wrong moment, the thunder god kicked him into the pyre. The poems report it without comment, senseless, ugly, true. Grief does that. The North knew. They laid Baldur on the pyre, his wife, Nanna, watching from the shore. Her heart burst. The poems mean it as anatomy, not poetry. She died of it there, and they laid her beside him. His horse was led onto the ship in full harness, and Odin came last and bent low over his son, and laid on the pyre the ring Draupnir, the dwarven ring that breeds gold, the wealth of heaven itself, sent into the ashes. And then the All-Father whispered something into the dead god's ear. What did Odin whisper to Baldur on the pyre? Stop. Understand what you were just told. Nobody knows. The poems raise the question themselves. It became a riddle of riddles in the north, the one no wisdom contest could answer because only Odin knows, and Odin never said. 1,000 years later, we still stand on that shore watching the old god's lips move, hearing nothing. Whatever the word was, he straightened up, and they put fire to the ship, and the sea took the light of the world away burning. But this family had one door left, and you already know the horse that can reach it. Hermod, another son of Odin, the fast one, the brave one, volunteered before the ashes cooled. He took Sleipnir and rode north and down, 9 nights through valleys so deep the dark had texture, over the river with the golden bridge where the dead girl who keeps the toll told him wonderingly that 5 whole battalions of dead had crossed the day before, but the bridge rang louder under him alone, because he was still alive. To the gates of hell, higher than sight, which the 8-legged horse cleared in one impossible jump, and into the hall of the half-corpse queen, where Hermod found his brother, Baldur, seated in the place of honor. On the benches, the seeress had watched them decking. All night Hermod pleaded with the queen of the dead, Loki's exiled daughter, the girl the gods had filed in the basement of the universe, now holding in her grey hands the one thing heaven could not live without. Do you see the geometry of it? The god's old fear, come home. All Asgard weeps, Hermod told her. Nothing in the worlds is loved as Baldur is loved. Name any ransom. And hell considered. And the answer she gave is the pivot on which the whole mythology turns. Listen to how strange it is. If he is so loved, she said, prove it. Let everything in existence weep for him. Everything, living and dead, flesh and stone and metal. If all the worlds weep, I release him. But if one thing, one single thing, refuses to mourn, he stays with me. Was it mercy with a trapdoor, or cruelty dressed as a test? Decide at the end of the chapter. Hermod rode home with the terms, and Baldur walked him out to the gate and gave him the ring Draupnir to carry back to Odin, returned from the dead with love. The gods flung messengers into every world, and then the universe did something no other mythology ever staged. It wept. On command and honestly, men and beasts wept. The earth wept. Stones wept. Iron wept. And the North nailed the image into permanent truth with one observation from daily life. You have seen this weeping yourself. When cold iron and stone come into a warm hall and the Thor stands on them in beads. That. The whole of existence dewed with grief for Baldur, exactly as everything weeps when brought out of frost. It remains 1,000 years on, one of the most beautiful sentences ever composed about mourning. Everything weeps when the cold begins to leave it. The messengers turned home through a weeping cosmos, the ransom all but paid, and in a cave in the rocks they found an old giantess sitting alone. Her name, she said, was Thok. They told her the news. They asked for her tears. One drop, and the light of the world comes home. And the old woman looked at them, and said the verse the North never forgave and never forgot. Thok will weep dry tears for Baldur's burial. Alive or dead, the old man's son brought me no joy. And then the line that closes the door forever. Let hell keep what she holds. One voice. The whole universe wept for Baldur. All of it. Oceans and anvils and enemies. Except one throat in one cave. And one was enough. The messengers stood in the cave mouth, watching the old woman refuse, and the poems say what the gods only later allowed themselves to conclude. that it was, of course, Loki. The same hand, finishing the same job through a second disguise, first the dart, then the veto. The murder had two acts, and the second was worse, because the second one killed the resurrection. Baldur stayed dead, stays dead. In every telling for all the ages of the world, the benches of hell keep their shining guest, and heaven above goes on, permanently holed below the waterline, the way a family goes on after the loss that ends the family. This is the wound the whole mythology is built around. Not that death took the best of the gods, but that grief, universal, unanimous grief, came one voice short of undoing it. In the arithmetic of the North, love lost to spite, twice. So ask, finally, the question the gods themselves must have asked through that long silence after the messengers came home. Who was the giantess in the cave? Say Loki, and you are right, and you have answered nothing. Why? What turns the cleverest mind in heaven? The fixer, the blood brother, the co-author of every treasure the gods own, into the one voice in a weeping universe that says no. The North does not tell you. It shows you a chained wolf. It shows you sewn lips, a laughing island, 3 children filed in the dark, a field where everything perfect belonged to everyone else. It lays out the whole ledger of small cruelties, and then it puts you in the cave with the dry-eyed old woman, and lets you feel, for one appalling second, that you can almost follow the arithmetic. Almost. And then it takes you to see what the gods did to him. Because heaven's morning was finished now, and something older than morning was awake in Asgard, and it had Loki's name in its teeth. The age of bargains was over. The age of consequences had come. Loki did not wait to be accused. He ran. There is one last story of him in Asgard before the running, and it is the ugliest poem in the North. He walked, uninvited, into a feast of the gods and stood in the firelight and did the one thing no one could stop him doing. He told the truth, one god at a time. Every buried shame in heaven aired in meter. Cowardice here, adultery there, corpse-eating, incest, sorcery in women's clothes. He worked down the benches like a man settling accounts before a journey, and the gods howled, and none of them could call him a liar. That is the horror of the poem, and the genius of it. On his last night among them, the father of lies audited heaven with facts. Only when a certain red-bearded god came through the door swinging did the audit adjourn. And on his way out of the hall, out of the fellowship of the gods forever, Loki turned at the threshold and paid for the feast with a prophecy. Your hall will burn. All of this will burn. Then he vanished into the mountains, and heaven came after him. He knew they would. That is the detail that makes the next scene one of the strangest in world mythology. The fugitive engineering his own manhunt. On a bald mountain with sightlines down every valley, Loki built a hut with 4 doors, one facing each compass point. No approach unwatched. By day he took the shape of a salmon and lay low in the pool below the falls of Franang, cold silver among the stones. By night he sat at his fire, running the pursuit in his mind, wargaming the gods. They will search the rivers, he thought. Nets sweep wide water. But this pool, boxed in rock? What could pull a fish from this? And his hands. This is the poem's own image, the cleverest hands in the universe, unable to stop. Began to knot linen thread across his knees, testing the problem, mesh by mesh, until the thing that could catch him lay finished in his lap. Loki invented the fishing net, sitting alone in a hut with 4 doors, waiting for the gods. And from the doorway he watched them come up the valley, led, the prose says, by the one Aesir wise enough to read tracks that think they had taken his measure at last. Loki threw the net in the fire and dove for the pool, but ash holds shape. The gods stood over his hearth, and there in the char lay the ghost of a lattice. Knot by knot, the confession of a design. They understood in silence. He made the tool that takes him. We only have to copy it. All night the gods of heaven sat tying knots. At dawn they dragged the pool. Twice the salmon beat them, under the weighted line into the deep, then a leap upstream over the cork line, silver in the spray, while the gods stood in the current and learned what fishermen know. On the third pass, they walked the net up the shallows, closing the water like a fist. And the salmon rose for the killing leap, and a hand came out of the spray and took him, out of the air, by the tail. Thor, the grip that holds through anything closed on wet silver muscle and did not slide. And the poems add, with the North's perfect instinct for making myth out of breakfast, that this is why the salmon tapers toward the tail to this day. Thor's handprint on every fish in every river. What the gods did next, they did in a cave under the mountains, and the poems report it in the flat voice they save for the things past dressing up. They brought Loki's family, Sigyn, his wife, who had done nothing, his two sons by her, Vali and Nafi, who had done nothing. And the gods turned Vali into a wolf. On the cave floor, in front of his parents, the boy's mind was drowned in a beast's, and the beast turned and tore his brother Nafi apart. Then the wolf ran, and the gods gathered up what it had left and drew out the dead boy's entrails, and with those they bound Loki. Across 3 stones, one under his shoulders, one under his loins, one under his knees. The gods stretched the trickster and tied him down with the sinews of his own son, and spoke over the knots, and the soft tissue hardened into iron. The children of the gods had been chained with a magic ribbon. The god who caused it was chained with his child. Then Skadi came forward. Skadi of the mountains, whose father burned at Asgard's wall, who had once been made to laugh. And she fixed a serpent to the cave roof above Loki's face, angled so its venom would drip, drop by drop, onto his eyes, forever. And the gods walked out of the cave and left him to it. But the poems end the scene on none of the gods. They end on Sigyn. The wife who had watched heaven's justice unmake both her sons stood in the dark and looked at what was left of her family, and stayed. She found a bowl and stood over her husband's face and caught the venom as it fell, drop by drop, age after age. She has no other story in all the literature of the North. No adventures, no schemes, no lines of dialogue. Only this, the bowl, the dark, the standing. She stayed. Of every vow made in this story, hers is the only one nobody broke. And when the bowl fills, because bowls fill, she must turn away to empty it. And for those few seconds, the venom falls free onto the eyes of the bound god, and Loki convulses against the sinews of his son, hard enough to move the roots of the mountains. The old North felt that. When the ground shuddered under Iceland and the winter hills groaned, they said it plainly, the bowl is full, he is writhing. Earthquakes in this mythology are not weather. They are a countdown. Each one the universe reminding you what is down there, straining, and how it will feel about the gods when the straining works. Step back now and count the cells. Under a mountain, Loki, hate distilling, drop by drop, bound in dead sun iron. Under the earth, Fenrir, jaws around a sword, a river of drool named Expectation running to the sea, a magic ribbon bearing his whole strength. Forever is a long time for a ribbon. At the seafloor, the serpent circling, grown into the world's own noose. In the deep mist, hell, her benches filling. every plague year and famine and shipwreck swelling the muster of the unquiet dead, with the brightest of the gods seated, waiting at their head. And in Asgard, a family that has buried its future, maimed its justice and manufactured, with its own frightened, clever, righteous hands, every single one of its executioners. The gods knew all of this. That is the thing to hold as this chapter ends. No one in Asgard mistook the cave for a solution. Punishment is not prevention. The seeress's timetable never moved an hour until Loki slips his chains. All heaven had bought in that cave was vengeance. And vengeance, the North knew better than anyone, is just a debt viewed from the other side. Then the weather changed. It came first as a winter that was hard even for the North. Snow from every direction at once, the poems say, frost that split stones, a wind with teeth. The lakes died to the bottom, and the world braced for spring. And here is the sentence the North built this entire mythology to make you feel. Spring did not come. Summer's month arrived, and the snow was still falling. A full year of winter, then a second year, then a third. 3 winters end with no summer between them, and the old poems gave the thing its true name, Fimble Winter, the Great Winter, the one the seeress had marked as the first tolling of the end. What does 3 years of night and famine do to the world of men? The seeress answered in the verse the North could recite in its sleep, the grimmest weather report in literature, an axe age, a sword age. Shields are riven, a wind age, a wolf age. Before the world goes under, brothers will fight and kill each other, kin will break the bonds of kin. It goes dark inside the houses first, she meant. The frost only takes the fields, the famine takes the family. And high above the starving world, in the black sky where no season came, the oldest chase in existence was ending. Since the second morning of creation, 2 wolves had hunted the sun and moon, and every eclipse men had screamed the jaws away. Now, in the endless dusk of the third winter, the sky wolves closed at last. One caught the moon, and Skoll caught the sun. The poems spend one line on the most important astronomical event in the history of the universe, and swallowed her. The last light went out, and far below, in the sudden absolute dark, on an island in a black lake, something that had waited 1,000 years for exactly this felt the ribbon around its legs. The ribbon woven of 6 impossible things, made when the world was young and the gods were sure. Begin, fibre by fibre. To fray, 3 roosters crow in the dark, one crimson-combed in the gallows wood east, waking the giants. One golden over Valhalla, waking the gods. One the color of rust, deep beneath the earth, waking the dead. No dawn behind any of them. The sun is eaten. This is the morning that comes without light, and every being in 9 worlds sits up in the dark and knows. At the top of the burning bridge, Heimdall, the watchman with 9 mothers who hears grass grow and needs less sleep than a bird, who has stood this post since the walls were young, sees at last the thing he was stationed to see, every border of the world moving, and he raises the Gjallarhorn, the horn heard in every world at once, and blows. One note, the note every god has been waiting for down all the long ages of knowing. The sound that means it is now. The world tree shudders, root to crown, the poems say. The old ash groans aloud, and every leaf in the universe shakes at once. The Norn's well trembles, and everything chained, everywhere, comes loose. The ribbon snaps. Fenrir rises off the island. 1,000 years of expectation stood up on 4 legs, and his first act as a free being is to open his mouth and keep opening it until the lower jaw scrapes the earth and the upper jaw scrapes the sky, and everything between is throat. He walks forward across the world, fire from his eyes, swallowing the space in front of him. And nothing that exists fits outside his bite. The sea rises, all of it, every ocean at once climbing over every coast. Because Jormungandr is turning. The serpent that circled the world lets go of its tail after all the ages and comes up out of the deep and hauls itself onto the land of men, writhing, continental, spraying venom across sky and sea alike. The two oldest prisoners of the gods, wolf and serpent, brother and brother, advance side by side, and on the flood behind them comes a ship. Naglfar. Hear this, because the North saved one of its coldest inventions for the end. A ship built entirely from the fingernails of the dead. Every corpse whose nails went untrimmed lent a plank, age upon age of neglect, keel to masttop, and the flood of the serpent floats her at last. Packed to the rails with the hungry dead and the sons of ruin, she runs before the storm. And at her helm, steering straight for the gods with his burns, healed white and his account book open, stands the freed prisoner of the cave. Loki has slipped his chains, exactly as the dead seeress said. The universe's cleverest mind, its bitterest grudge, and its entire population of the vengeful dead. Under one captain, on one heading. The sky tears open, not thunder, fabric. The southern heaven splits end to end, and through the rent ride the sons of Muspelheim, the fire that was before the beginning. And at their head, at last, after every chapter of waiting since the second minute of this story, Surtur, the black giant from before the worlds, with the sword brighter than the sun ever was. He has stood at his border since before there was time, holding that light, patient as geology. Where his host crosses the burning bridge, Bifrost. The rainbow the gods rode down to their councils, cracks under the fire and falls out of the sky in colored shards. The rainbow breaks. If the North had told you nothing else, that image alone would tell you everything. The road between heaven and earth is gone. Whatever happens next, nobody is coming to help. They converge. Wolf, serpent, fire, the dead, and the frost giants of the old grudge marching under Hrym from the east. On one plain, the prophecy named ages ago, Vigrid, 100 leagues on a side, flat as a table with nothing to hide behind. The universe has an address for its ending, and always did. And in Asgard, no one panics. And here the mythology plays its final, quietest card. There is no council. There is no debate. Every being in the golden halls has known this morning by name for 1,000 years. The plans were made before some of the fighters were born. Heimdall's note still hangs in the air as Odin does the last deliberate thing of his long, deliberate life. He rides, one more time, down to the root of the tree, to the well, to the severed head of Mimir, and the All-Father and the head speak alone for the last time. No poem records a word of it. There was nothing left to learn. The plans were centuries old, which means the wisest being in the universe on the last morning rode down, not for strategy, but to say goodbye to his oldest friend. Then he straightens and rides back up and puts on the eagle helm and the mail that has waited in its chest since before Baldur died. He takes up Gungnir, the spear that cannot miss, forged in chapter 4 by dwarves who are all this morning hiding under their mountains. And Valhalla opens. Every door, 540 of them, swings wide at once, and the purpose of everything comes out in ranks. 800 warriors abreast through every door. The Einherjar, the harvested dead of every human battlefield since war began, drilled daily for centuries in the only academy where the students die every afternoon and muster again at dawn. This is what it was all for. The Valkyries over the battlefields, the choosing of the slain, the eternal rehearsal. Odin was accused by his own poems of giving victory unfairly, of cutting down champions in their prime. And here is the ledger balanced. He was drafting the best early because the best were needed for this. The whole institution of Viking death. Every raid, every last stand, every warrior who smiled as he fell because Valhalla was watching, funnels to this plain, this morning, this muster. The army of the gods and the army of the dead march out together onto Vigrid, and across the plain, the fire and the frost and the wolf and the serpent and the fleet of nails stand waiting, and there is one heartbeat. The poems give it to you whole, where the two hosts of everything simply look at each other. Every fighter on both sides knows how this ends. The seeress published it ages ago. The gods have had 1,000 years to read it. This is the moment the whole mythology has been holding its breath for. Not to see who wins, to see whether beings who know they lose will fight anyway. Odin answers for all of them. The old king picks his opponent. The one with his name on it, the jaws from earth to sky, the pup his own fear built. And the All-Father charges the wolf. Now it is all present tense, and it is all at once. The North told the end as matchups, debt against debt, and so will we, Odin against Fenrir, the spear that cannot miss, missing nothing and mattering nothing. You cannot spear a throat the size of a sky. The one-eyed god who paid everything for wisdom fights with everything wisdom bought, ravens screaming over the melee. And the jaws close. Listen to how the poems say it, because they say it in one appalling breath. The wolf swallows Odin, whole. Wisdom, runes, sacrifices, ravens, memory, the eye in the well and the eye in the head, the whole vast ancient project of the mind of the universe. Swallowed. The seeress called this, ages ago, the second grief of Frigg, her husband, after her son. The all-father of gods and men is gone. Not slain, not fallen, eaten. Erased into the dark, he spent his whole existence mapping. And out of the ranks steps a god this story has kept in its pocket for exactly this panel. Vidar, Odin's son, the silent one, the god with no myths, no feasts, no lines, who all the long ages did one strange thing only. He saved scraps. Every scrap of leather cut from every shoe ever made and thrown away. The waste, the offcuts, the nothing. Went, by old belief, to build Vidar's shoe. And now the silent god walks to the wolf that ate his father and plants that shoe, sold with all the discarded leavings of all the world, on the monster's lower jaw, and takes the upper jaw in his hands. And tears. The wolf that swallowed the All-Father is ripped open, jaw from jaw, by the god of saved scraps. Vengeance built, sliver by sliver, from everything everyone else threw away. The North is telling you one last joke with a straight face. The wolf ate the greatest of the gods and was killed by the leftovers. Thor against Jormungandr. The appointment made on a fishing trip, kept at last. No giant to cut the line this time, no flaw of a boat between them. The thunder god and the world noose close on each other through the venom fog, hammer and coil, the two oldest sparring partners in creation. And Thor wins. Understand that. Thor wins. Mjolnir comes down out of the black sky one final time and cracks the serpent's skull, and the beast that circled mankind's whole world dies on the plain. The defender of Midgard defending it to the letter, one last time. And Thor steps back from the carcass into the cloud of its venom, chest full, and begins to walk away. He makes 9 steps. The poems count them. The North counted them for 1,000 years, like a rosary. 9 steps. And on the 9th, the strongest being that ever lived, goes down, poisoned by the thing he killed. Old age took him to one knee once, in a trick. The serpent takes him the rest of the way, in earnest. Even victory on this morning is a kind of losing. The mythology's oldest lesson, taught one last time with its favorite son, Frey against Surtur. The most beloved of gods against the fire from before the beginning. And you have known since the barley field how this one reads. Frey stands in the path of the sword, brighter than the sun holding an antler, because love took the blade that fights by itself, and the poems spend their grief in 5 words. Frey falls to Surtur. The kindest bargain in the mythology, paid in full on schedule. He is the first of the gods to die on the plain, and the summer dies with him. Tyr against Garm, the one-handed god of oaths against the bloody-chested hound of the dead. The two bind their teeth in each other, and neither lets go, and justice and the grave kill each other evenly, which may be the North's driest verdict on both. And Heimdall against Loki. Of course, the watchman against the infiltrator, the border against the breach. The two beings who have hated each other with the pure professional hatred of guard and thief since the walls were new. They meet at the edge of the burning and kill each other simultaneously, neither outliving the other by a breath. The first thing Loki ever broke was heaven's trust. The last thing is its watchman, and the last thing broken in Loki is done by the watch. The ledgers close together. And then, with the champions down on every side, the wolf torn, the serpent cracked, the All-Father eaten, the fields of Vigrid carpeted with the dead of both armies, and the Einherjar spending their centuries of practice to the last man. Surtur straightens, looks out over the plain where everything old has finished killing everything old, and does what he was keeping the sword for. He flings fire over the world, all of it. The poems stop doing match-ups here and pull the camera all the way back and give you the ending in the seeress's own hammered lines, and no one has ever said it better. So listen, the sun turns black, land sinks into sea. The bright stars fall out of the sky. Steam and flame rage against heaven itself. The world tree, the ash that suffered more than men knew, that the sisters watered every morning of time, burns, all 9 worlds in its branches burning with it, and the sea rises over the ash of everything. And the last thing anyone would have seen, had anyone remained, is quiet grey water where the universe used to be. The wolf has eaten the sun, the sea has eaten the land, the fire has eaten the gods. The story the seeress told is finished. Every line of it kept, every debt from the first murder paid at last in full. The world of the gods ends exactly as the gods were always told it would. And if this mythology ended there, 1,000 years of northern souls would never have carried it through ice and conquest and conversion, whispering it to their children. It does not end there, because the seeress had not stopped speaking, and the gods. This is the secret the whole story has been keeping for you, the reason they could stand on that plain unflinching. The gods had heard the rest. The seeress's poem does not end with the fire. It ends with a line that begins, "She sees, rising a second time. Out of the grey water, land comes up. Green." That is the detail the old verse insists on. Not scorched, not grey like the sea that covered it. Green, already growing, washed clean. Waterfalls find their courses again. The eagle returns. The poem takes one line to notice it. An eagle over the falls, hunting fish along the mountain, which is the seeress's way of saying, the world works, the oldest machinery of all. Water, fish, hunger, wings, turning again as if the fire had been a fever, and the fever has broken. And across the new green land walk survivors, Vidar, the Silent One, jaw-render, who was built for the morning after. His brother, Vali. From Thor's line, the sons Modi and Magni. Their names mean courage and strength. And they walk out of the ruin of everything carrying one object between them, Mjolnir. The hammer outlived the arm. The sons of Thor carry their father's weapon into the new world, not to fight. Everything that needed fighting is ash. But the way a family carries a name. Honir is there, the old silent partner from the Dawn chapters, holding the carved lots of the future. And down the slope of the new morning come two more walking together, and if the whole mythology has a payoff frame, it is this one, Baldur and Hod. The murdered light and the blind hand that threw the dart. Back from hell together, side by side. Death did not keep him after all. It kept him until the world that killed him had burned. The gates of the half-corpse queen opened when everything else broke, and the best thing the universe ever made walks out of the basement of it into the second morning, with his brother, forgiven, beside him. Hell's bargain. Let all things weep, and one voice refused. Bound the old world only. The old world is gone. The arithmetic of spite burned with it. The young gods gather on Idavol, the field where Asgard stood, now grass. And there, in the turf, they find something. The poems could have given the survivors anything. Thrones, weapons, treasure. Here is what the verse gives them. Golden chess pieces lying in the grass. The gaming pieces the old gods played with in the morning of the world, in the golden age before the bargains, found again by their children, glinting in the green. The survivors kneel in the grass of the burned world, picking up their parents' game, and the mythology's last image of the gods is this, the children of the dead sitting down together in the sun to play again and to talk. That is what the poem actually says they do. They sit and they remember the old stories, the wolf, the serpent, the runes of the All-Father. The first thing the new world does with its inheritance is tell the story you have just heard. And the humans. Did the seeress forget mankind? Driftwood-born, walled in Midgard, ground between armies at the end? She did not. During the burning, and only two humans in all the worlds managed this. A pair hid in the one place the fire could not finish, deep inside the wood of Yggdrasil itself. The tree that suffered everything, the ash the dragon chewed and the fire took. Its heartwood held. Their names were Lif and Lifthrasir, life and life's striver. They slept out the end of the world inside the world tree, fed, the old verse says, on the morning dews, and when the green came back, they stepped out of the wood onto the new earth, and from those two come all the generations of the world to follow, every human of the age after the fire. Now close the loop yourself. The story planted it 3 chapters into the past. What were the first humans made from? Driftwood on a beach. Ask the ash tree, Embla the elm. Mankind entered this mythology as wood the gods found and breathed into, and survives its ending as wood again, hidden in wood, out-enduring the gods themselves. The North buried its answer in its lumber. Gods are fire and glory, and fire burns out. People are timber, slow, plain, unkillable. Wood remembers, wood keeps, and above the green world, a sun. The old sun is dead. The wolf got her in the dark of the great winter. But the poems reach back and tell you what she did before the jaws closed. She bore a daughter. As bright as the mother, the verse says, and now the daughter drives her mother's road across the sky, on the old track, at the old pace. Light resumed 1 generation on. The North looked straight at its own worst truth. The sun itself can die. and answered with the only immortality it ever believed in. For sons or gods or fishermen, the child carries the road forward. So now, the question this entire story has been walking toward: go back to the frozen plain where we began, to the old one-eyed god standing before jaws that stretch from earth to heaven. Odin has read the prophecy, all of it, which means he knows about the wolf and he knows about the green land after. He knows he will not see it, erased into the dark, unrecoverable. For him, the prophecy offers nothing, and he arms and mounts and charges. Why? Because the prophecy that promised the doom also promised the dawn. And the dawn needed the doom fought. Somebody had to hold the plain. Somebody had to spend the wolf's hunger and the serpent's venom and the fire's one terrible sword against themselves, so that what came through the gap, two people in a tree, a handful of children, a hammer, a returning light, would inherit a world the monsters had died in. The gods of the north were never fighting for their lives. They read the schedule. They knew their lives were spent. They were fighting for the morning after, a morning they knew in detail they would never see. That is not tragedy, whatever it costs. That is the oldest definition of the only thing the North ever fully worshipped: courage. And the strangest part of this whole strange story: the prophecy came true. All of it, including the part about the story surviving, because the world of the gods really did end. It happened around the year 1000, and it was called conversion. The temples fell, the old faith went under history's sea, and on an island of fire and ice at the edge of the maps, Iceland, 2 centuries after the North had bowed to the new god, a Christian scholar named Snorri Sturluson sat down with the old pagan poems his people still half remembered, and wrote them down, saved them, like scraps of leather, like seeds in heartwood. Nearly everything you have heard tonight survives because a man who did not believe in these gods decided their story deserved to outlive their religion. The myth of the North had its own Ragnarok, and hid in a book and came out the other side, green, came out and conquered. Count the old god's territory today. Tolkien reread those Icelandic pages and lifted from one single stanza of the seeress's poem the names Durin, Dwalin, Fili, Kili, Thorin, Oakenshield, and a few lines later, Gandalf. Middle-earth is Midgard translated. There is no fantasy shelf on this planet that does not trace, root by root, to Yggdrasil. Marvel put Thor's hammer in theaters in front of billions. God of War put Fenrir and the World Serpent in living rooms. Every Berserk, every saga, every Ragnarok headline when the news turns dark. Loanwords from the Longship people. And the deepest occupation of all is the one in your pocket. Look at your calendar. Tuesday is Tears Day. The one-handed god of oaths keeps the 3rd day of your week. Wednesday is Woden's Day, Odin's Day. The All-Father is hiding in your Wednesday morning meetings. Thursday, you know already. The Thunderer. Friday belongs to Frigg, the queen who made everything swear. The gods the wolf ate and the fire took are spoken by you, by name, every single week of your life, and you never even feel the Old North on your tongue. The seeress promised the gods would fall, and they fell. She promised something would come through the fire, green and alive, carrying the old names into a new age. You are speaking it. Every mythology makes its people a promise. The Greeks promised glory. Do something great, and the poets keep your name. The Egyptians promised eternity. Weigh out a good heart, and death is a doorway. In the story we told before this one, the Chinese promised order. Heaven is a bureaucracy, and it keeps records, and effort is noticed. The North promised nothing. No rescue, no exemption. The Norse looked at the world exactly as it is. The winter always coming back, the crops that fail, the ships that don't return, the memory that flies out in the morning and doesn't come home, and built the only mythology on earth honest enough to put the ending in writing and hand it to its gods. Everything dies, the seeress says. Your gods too, your sun too, signed, dated, carved. And then, this is the gift, the thing the longship people found at the bottom of the coldest cosmology ever imagined. Then it asks, knowing that, what will you do this morning? Odin knew and traded an eye for one more layer of the truth. Tyr knew and put his hand in the mouth anyway because someone's word had to be good. Sigyn knew and stayed in the cave holding the bowl. Thor knew. 9 steps were in the ledger before he ever raised the hammer, and he still got up that morning and went to meet the serpent because Midgard was his to hold, and it was a working day. 1,000 years after the last longship, their gods still keep the days of your week, and their answer still stands, plain as a carved stone in the snow. Courage was never the belief that you will win. Courage is reading the prophecy all the way to the end, and drawing your sword anyway. The mead is brewed, the benches are decked, the story is yours now. Tell it forward. If you want to know what the other great civilizations answered, how India dreamed a universe that dies and is reborn forever, or how China built a heaven that runs on paperwork, those stories are here on the channel, told the way we told this one, complete, from the first spark to the last. The fire is lit. Stay as long as you like.